Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's had some tea and is having a nice day at LitFest. My name is John McKenna. I'm going to introduce our next guests, Eric Werner and Mya Henry, who run the Hartwood restaurant on the edge of the jungle in Tulum, in Mexico, in the Mundo Maya. You know, anybody who knows about restaurants knows that there's a particular DNA that runs through, you know, that only restaurateurs actually share. And it's a kind of DNA which says that the people are basically completely crazy, because otherwise you wouldn't do the job. It's too hard, the hours are too long, the money's too bad. You know, it's too kind of crazy. So you know, your genetic makeup has to involve a substantial amount of lunacy genes, you know. And so consider the situation of Eric and Mya then, both working in New York in restaurant jobs, and then they suddenly say, do you know what? We'll go to the edge of the jungle and we'll create a restaurant. And it will have no walls. And it will have no electricity. And within a couple of years of opening, René Redzepi will say about Hartwood, this is the place I dream about. So imagine creating that cultural impact. But they're not just crazy, they're brilliant cooks, and their book is one of the most beautiful books I have seen in recent times. But they knew what they were doing because they write in the book, there was no backup plan. The backup plan was that we would fail and move back to New York, and people would know we failed. Well, they didn't fail. So from Hartwood, to tell us their story, please, Eric Werner and Mya Henry.
Go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah, I think I'll start. This all began in the year of 2009 in December, where it's completely frigid and New York City is all iced over, and we wanted to escape over New Year's, go to Tulum, Mexico, which is, if you fly into Cancun, it's about 2.5-hour drive south of Cancun. It's actually the complete antithesis of what Cancun is. It's completely off-grid. There are no major hotels. There's nothing built over 2 stories. There's no electricity. There's no plumbing, no water. It's basically beautiful ocean that's clear blue, warm, white sand, palm trees, people running around half naked and happy and drunk off of whatever mezcal or tequila they've been drinking. So anyway, we escaped there for a holiday. And like most people who go on holiday, you start to fantasize a little bit about what it would be like if you were to stay in this amazing, dreamy place. And the only difference was that really Eric and I were crazy enough to kind of act on that pipe dream, where we returned in January. We put into motion a plan. And the next time we returned, it was nearly 6 months later. We'd packed up all of our things from our apartment, put everything into storage, packed 2 suitcases, enough that we needed, and returned back to Tulum, to Mexico, where we basically didn't even know how or where or exactly when we were gonna build this restaurant of our dreams. So we were basically there for many months, drinking at noon in our apartment, trying to get meetings with people and officials and working through the beginning stages, you know, all the red tape, all the politics, and all the paperwork that had to be in place before this. But we ended up settling on a parcel of land that no one wanted. It was about 10 by 50 meters, and basically it was in about 5 feet of water, because we had mangroves in the back. We are on the jungle side of this one little beach road in Tulum. On one side is the ocean, and the other side is the jungle. And at the time, there really weren't too many people building on the jungle side. It was basically overgrown and lush and mosquitoes and snakes. It was a haven for all of these things. And basically no one wanted the property on that side. Everybody was going after the ocean front. But it was all that we could afford, so this is what we bought. And it had this beautiful fig tree out front, and that's essentially what sold us on the property. So we had to clear the land and begin to build, and that took about 6 months. And we basically built a restaurant that was open air. We have one wall, essentially. That's the backdrop of the kitchen. And everything else is open. The whole dining area was filled in with local limestone gravel. We had all of the tables made, all the ironwork. The whole restaurant was designed with the local community who came in. They built everything for us, so everything was like custom made. And so I think Eric's going to talk a little bit about how we run the restaurant. We're sustainable. A lot of people talk about sustainability, but we're sustainable in the energy aspect as well as not just the food, but it's also how we run off of solar panels and so forth. So he's going to go into that with a little more detail.
Hello, everyone. You know, when you're thinking about a restaurant and you're thinking about all the things that are involved in the restaurant, you're thinking about welcoming people maybe 2 or 3 times over in an evening, right? So there's a lot of wear, there's a lot of usage of the restaurant, there's a lot of things going on, cooking throughout the day, cooking throughout the evening. A lot of energy is used, and that was our main concern in you know, having this little restaurant off the grid. There was no electrical lines from town coming to the restaurant. There was no plumbing from town coming to the restaurant. So you can imagine being in the middle of nowhere and trying to set up your dream restaurant, right? So there's a lot of challenges against you. In doing that, we started researching solar energy being our first concern. How are we going to have energy to turn on lights in the restaurant? How are we going to be able to play music first and foremost, right? Because that was my main concern. Yeah? It was, and that's basically why the music is right next to the kitchen, so we can control that from the kitchen. So we're happy, you know, cooking throughout the night. So we bought these used solar panels, okay, off a friend of ours down the road, right? We bought an inverter, and we bought about 10 used batteries, okay, that can store the energy from the solar panels, brought down to the inverter, stored in the batteries, and now we can have about 3 to 4 hours of usage, maybe, hopefully 3 to 4 hours if it's a sunny day, okay, to go into the night to run some, you know, low wattage light bulbs and to run our, you know, low wattage speakers, right? That was the beginning. We quickly realized that due to the being right next to the coast, the salt air hitting everything, the torrential downpours that come without us during the year, all these factors became involved in, you know, sustainable energy. So we were running out of energy come like around 8 o'clock at night. So you're going through service, your restaurant's busy, and then all of a sudden the electricity shuts off, okay? So you can imagine that. Imagine being in a restaurant, busy, and everything going dark, you know, except for the candles. At times it would be nice, you know what I mean? And then at other times it would be, you know, quite dangerous. So then we started to go into better batteries little by little. So all the money that we were making with the restaurant would go directly back into our system, right? It was constantly being turned over and, you know, providing, you know, something a little bit better. After we got down the energy aspect to a certain degree, we now needed to go into the water aspect. Okay, the water aspect being all the dishwater from the sinks, the bathroom, everything all together, all of the water. So we had to tap into a cenote in town, have a huge truck, bring it into from town, fill our tinakas, which are kind of cisterns, way up high, and have gravity pipes bringing that down into servicing all of the dish sinks and so forth, right? Now that water, once it leaves all of these things, it now has to go somewhere. So where's it gonna go? You're gonna send it into the mangrove or to the lagoon that's behind you? You know, that's impossible, you can't do that. That's polluting the environment, right? So what we developed the system with an engineer and a scientist is a healthy aerobic system that has organic enzymes that now will eat the greases and the fats and live off this system, right? Now, this system is in place, and it takes about 6 to 7 months, maybe a little bit longer, to get healthy, to become active, so it can keep up with your pace of how many people you're doing within a restaurant. So the grease traps that we have are 2 to 3 grease traps. One sand silt grease trap, which the grease connects itself and kind of floats up to the surface, provided by heat, right? And then at the top, those enzymes eat that. It's getting a little bit technical now, but this is what we had to be faced with, right? That goes into 2 to 3 other chambers, and then at the end of this process, okay, it produces, now we're up to 97% clean fertilized water. Clean fertilized water which slowly gets let out into the mangroves around us. It produces this clean fertilized water which then produces mangroves that are the greenest I've ever seen before in my life. It makes banana trees grow double in size, okay? It was something that took me and took our team so long, and I stayed up so many nights thinking about it and how this can happen. And now it's something that is in place for Tulum that people are doing before they even start building. So with this guy named Ivan and this company called Hoja Verde, we both connected together and created something that is not only beyond sustainable, but can keep working over and over throughout the years. And the longer it keeps going, each night that it keeps operating, the healthier it becomes, right? All of the water from the coolers, we have 12 fish coolers, okay? They're all held by ice. So all of the fish that we get in throughout the day, which is about 130 to 140 kilos of fish every 2 days, gets put into these ice coolers. The water melts down from the ice coolers, again gets put back into that system, okay? So every single drop of water that is on our 10 meters by 50 meters piece of property gets brought back into this system, right?
Yeah, we don't have conventional refrigeration.
Yeah,
we have a solar refrigerator, but it's
tiny.
Small.
Yeah, so we're cooking for the evening and the evening alone. So we're prepping during the day, starting about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we finish prepping like around 4:30, 5 o'clock, which is about 6 o'clock we start service. And that goes 5 days throughout the week, really 6 days. We're closed Mondays and Tuesday, but we're still prepping on Tuesday. Now it's, when you're thinking about how you can less impact, the environment through having something like a restaurant, you have to think, where does your grease go after you get rid of it from your restaurant? Where does your waste go? Who deals with it after you? And we didn't have that luxury to think about hiring a company in to come deal with our waste. It didn't exist, right? So we had to deal with it and be faced with this problem all the way through. And we faced problems and struggles and tears and, loss of money and all this kind of stuff. But it's just like patience, The more patience that you have and the more belief that you have in where you live in the community, the more that you're going to be thinking about sustainability. Sustainability is not just with how well I can compost or how well I can, keep my business running or so forth, so on. It's about the entire community. It's about keeping everything alive. It's about how much you're buying locally, how much you are, really looking at the big picture of where you're going to be in 4 or 5 years. It's hard. It's an extremely hard thing. When you first open a restaurant, you're faced with all these bills. You're already in debt. When we first started, our credit cards were maxed. We were, at near end just in the beginning. But little by little, it keeps going, and it keeps going in a direction. If you follow a positive route and you follow your healthy conscience, that these things will start to come together. Our fishermen in the beginning, we had to work with daily, because these guys were spearfishing and these guys were using single line, and we wanted to kind of see what we were catching, even if our quantities went up. We had to still keep on top of that it's going to be caught this way. There's not going to be any long lining. There's not going to be any drag netting. It's going to be exactly one way all the way through. And if we're going to stick to that, we can never be hypocritical and go back and make any sacrifices. And if that means taking less reservations for the night because we don't have enough fish from that one catch because the sea was rough that day, that's what happens. And once you start making that one sacrifice with sustainability, everything starts to come about, because it's just that little excuse that you have. It's one of those things that it becomes very hard, but it is really the way of the future. And if a small restaurant like Hartwood can do this in the middle of the nowhere with little resources and really just maybe 2 bored people without any TV thinking about how to do this day in and day out, then imagine what can be done in a more forward community, a community that has all of these things together. So that's kind of that was the basis of this book when we did it. It was more of kind of explaining the thought process behind some of these recipes. I didn't necessarily dislike cooking over gas. I just thought that there might be a better way with using wood that already dropped within the jungle, a dead wood already that's already kiln dried by the sun, that's already dried out, and using that for your source of your heat. Okay, that again was difficult. How do you run service and do 3 to 4 turns in an evening based off of a wood burning oven and a grill and a salad station with no refrigeration? These things happened, and we had to find solutions to these problems. And I asked a lot of people. I invited people down to the restaurant that could help me with some of these answers. And I was constantly humbled by asking the Mayan community around us. I was always, the Mayan community has farmed for thousands of years with no farming equipment, no fertilizers, no pesticides, and everything being done by hand. Okay, this is harvesting honey. This is growing mango trees, orange trees, pineapple, sugar cane, dragon fruit, passion fruit, watermelon, squash, corn, beans, everything in the harvest, and all on one same plot. So this whole mentality all together created this community down there, which is like a little bubble community. We are on the edge of the Sankan biosphere and about 1 kilometer away from one of the oldest ruins within the Yucatan Peninsula. Okay, we couldn't cut down any palm trees by building this property in the beginning, so all the palm trees are sticking up through the middle of the restaurant everywhere.
The roofs.
Coming up to
cut
the
holes
bar.
In our roofs.
Yeah, we had to anticipate cutting holes in the roof.
So they're giant palm trees, and some of them really small, and now they've gotten larger. Like it started out this big around, and now it's a palm tree this big around. So we have to keep cutting the hole.
Yeah. And then to make sure, then cutting that hole in the roof, we started to see that rain was coming in through the roof during torrential downpours. So how are we going to fix that? So we managed to figure out that the inside of a tire tube worked really well along the outside of the palm tree, and connecting that to the roof so it can grow and expand, so it can move. When you have wind, the palm tree moves on the top. So instead of taking out your whole entire roof system, how is that going to have flexibility? Trial and error, right? All these things are trial and error. It's just like cooking. Being sustainable is just like cooking. You're faced with, something that you want to have come out as a solution, and how do you problem solve that all the way through? And only through the community can you really come through a proper answer. You alone in trying to become sustainable is, really the trial and error. Because when I was by myself, I made mistakes left and right. Only when I began asking for help and sending out some emails and asking, people that have been in the community for years and years and years, how do we do this? That's when, answers started to flow in. I think that it's, when I go to a city and I see restaurants running sustainable, I think it's a miracle. I think that it's something that they're really going against because they have those conveniences there, and they're saying no, and they're going with the harder route. But it's proving positive because that example is stronger than anything that you can have. And at the end of the day, it saves money, right? Maybe not right in the beginning, but the energy bills that are coming in these days are significant. And you guys all see the documentaries. You see the documentaries for fracking. You see the documentaries for, all these
Climate
improper
change.
waste systems. Exactly.
So even, as a restaurant, we can talk about sustainability in other ways, aside from the food aspect.
Yeah. So I would like to open up to anybody who has any questions right now. And, is that okay?
Great, Eric.
Yeah.
Mya, thank you very much. I'm sure we do. Do we have a microphone? I'm sure we have some restaurateurs in the audience who are saying, my goodness, how did you do that? Let me ask you one question, if I may. I mean, you have received an extraordinary amount of coverage in the food media and the news media, the Lucky Peach, the New York Times, whatever it may be. Was there any significant piece of writing in the media that made a significant difference to the business? Or did you find you were able to get an audience fairly quickly?
I think that everybody that has written about the restaurant has really increased the coverage of this issue, you know? And I think that the issue was, yes, it's a beautiful restaurant, it's on the Caribbean, and when you're on vacation, you know, come to this restaurant, right? But it's important to look behind these layers of beauty and to see the guts of it, right? And that was what all this coverage and all the press and everything like that allowed to see. And it really strengthened the community in regards to when we first came down there, there was a bunch of local farmers, right? Not all of them had tons of work. The fishing co-op at the time was maybe about 2 to 3 fishermen that didn't have a lot of work, right? They would, were kind of hit or miss sometimes. And through all the people coming to the restaurant, now we can sustain a community of organic farmers, of Mayan fishermen, you know, all across up to, you know, 40, 50 kilometers on a daily basis. So guys that I would see that had, you know, broken down pickup trucks that couldn't even make their deliveries to the restaurant have now brand new pickup trucks. All their families are well, and everybody's happy. We didn't go down there to say to own a piece of property.
Vertically integrate.
Yeah, to kind of vertically integrate the business. We wanted to come down there to strengthen the community with or without us. They're strong. You know, and that was the whole, you know, philosophy behind it. We did not want to be the hinge on this community and its strength. We wanted each one of these individual farmers to have the strength inside themselves and the strength of their business that they can keep going no matter what, and they have that. That's that confidence.
That was our way of supporting the economy.
Yeah.
Do you think you've also attracted attention as well? Because, I mean, many people say, for example, of those who visit the Caribbean islands, all the food comes in. Yeah. You know, you go there to a resort and you're eating stuff that has all been flown in,
right?
Or you know, boated in, and it's a considerable sort of source of dissatisfaction for food lovers to kind of think, well, surely there's something out there that people could find, but you went and found it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't resist. It was, you know, I was able to get things that are wild caught. You know, if I wanted to go out that day, in which I did some days, and go fishing with, you know, with a spear gun and go, you know, spear fishing, I can take that fish, I can hunt that fish properly, bring it back to the restaurant, and cook it for somebody coming in. You know, it was, I didn't have to go through anybody. I didn't have to get a stamp on it. You know, now this is a bit propaganda, right? I shouldn't really be talking about this much.
It's just the fishermen were really underutilized at the time when we moved to Tulum. I think, you know, oftentimes when you're talking about creating a business, you're thinking of there's got to be a niche to be filled. We're not here to repeat ourselves. Maybe there isn't another restaurant that's needed in the area. You have to think about demand, you know, and what's the supply. And there wasn't any, you know, these fishermen, they weren't surviving off the community because people were buying frozen fish from China along the Caribbean.
But that happens everywhere.
It was a travesty.
That's a constant issue.
Well, that's larger chain hotels, not close to us either. But so these were all things that we saw, and no one could ID a lot of the products. They didn't know what they were. They were foreign. They were strange, and so people shied away from them. They were really scared, intimidated by them. And we went out there and we were like, what is this? Let's start asking questions. We'd go to the markets and talk to the people. Well, what is this? What do you use this for? Yeah. You know, and they'd tell us, and then we'd bring it back to the kitchen, and the kitchen would then experiment with it. We'd taste it, cook it, see what we could do with it.
I spent most of my days in the first year in a pickup truck going to the middle of nowhere, going down roads that had no names on them, and just looking for farmers and looking for guys to work with. And I spent most of my nights going to night markets in the middle of the Yucatan and strange towns, and where I was the only foreigner, you know, for a long ways away. And, you know, just started making conversation and just started asking the ladies at these markets and following them, sometimes sleeping over, following them back to their farm and looking and see what they have and see how we can work together. And some of these are small little farms, some of them are a little bit bigger. It takes a little bit of research to find, right? now I have to be back for service every night and have to work the line with my crew. How am I going to be going back and forth? So what I had to thought about that problem, and it came pretty simply, was that I was going to hook up with these taxistas. It's a small group of taxis, that are in these little communities, and I'm going to get a phone number for one of these guys, and you know, the person who has this farm, they're going to let me know when they have these things that are ready, maybe like pineapples or mangoes or something like that, something that I'm really interested in, and they're going to call me, and I'm going to call the taxi. They're going to both meet up, okay? The taxi's then going to bring the stuff back to Tulum. And that started off as a small group of taxis, you know, maybe in about an hour and a half away. And now these guys are coming from 5 hours away.
It's
Sometimes
like relay
in southern
races.
Chiapas. Relay races, connecting
Passing
one
the
to the other.
baton of produce.
So it was just, it turned, I mean, these things are exciting. You know what I mean? They're funny when you think about it, but it's getting the job done.
One of our taxis, actually, just so we can drive the point home, was part of our Secret Santa. You know, for Christmas, you have Secret Santa in the restaurant. You know, we pull names and everything. One of our taxi guys, he was part of the Secret Santa.
He's family meal with us every night. We see him every day. His name is Juan. So,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Okay, I'll just ask the ladies and gentlemen in the audience, any questions? Question here, just 1 second, madam, and we just get a microphone to you. Hold on now so we can all hear.
Sorry, was there a language barrier when you went there first, or did you speak?
Yeah, I spoke Spanish when going down there, okay? I did not speak mine, all right? So there was a language barrier. I needed to know, in going into the markets, and they're also in the Yucatan, okay? I worked with a lot of guys in New York, from Puebla, from Mexico City, or Sinaloa. I worked with all these guys. Now that's a different dialect, okay? With different names for different chilies, and different, you know, the chayote was different, you know, chile ancho was different. All these things were different. In the Yucatan, there was a whole different kind of vocabulary, right? And Spanish was spoken quite differently. So when we first moved down, we had to go to the markets and figure out the names of all these different fruits and vegetables. And that's still ongoing. You know, the vocabulary is still ongoing. I mean, I'm being humbled and taught every single day. I am not the teacher there. I'm definitely a student in my daily activities, you know. So.
Wonderful. Any questions just finally, ladies and gentlemen? Yes, lady here.
I was just wondering why you called it Hartwood.
Why did you call it Hartwood?
So Hartwood has a couple meanings. My father and I used to hunt at a property in upstate New York, and the name of the small little amity was Hartwood. Okay, and my father passed away when I was younger, so this was something for us to remember by. Maya's father's company, also in South Carolina, a small landscaping company, was called Hartwood. We didn't know, so it just kind of rang together.
Well, I think we go through the process of opening a restaurant, and oftentimes you just don't have the name right away. So we're going back and forth with that, and knowing that we were going to be doing wood burning.
Yeah.
It kind of resonated, and it wasn't literal. We didn't do a literal spelling, but it just seemed warm, and it seemed like us. We kept thinking of, well, we're in Mexico, and we should be coming up with a name that's in Spanish.
Hartwood might have been Corazon de Leña, you know, but not Corazon de Leña, you know. So
it was just, the translation wasn't working out, and we just thought, well, let's just be us.
Yeah.
Because this has some meaning to it. It means something to us, and so.
Well, congratulations that you've done so. Ladies and gentlemen, oh, sorry. Hold on, madam, I'll just get the microphone to you. Oh, yes.
Yes, we serve a lot of pork, and all the pork comes from the Yucatan. Okay, the Yucatan pork is quite delicious, you know. And we have maybe one red meat item on the menu per night, and that comes from the north of Mexico. There are no real grazing pastures in the south of where it's kind of limestone ground, and it's quite hot as well. So, thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody, get a big Litfest award for Eric and Maya. Thank you very much.